Well, hello and welcome to World Architecture Festival 2021. And for this session, welcome to Architectural Photography Awards 2021. I'm joined here in our studio in London by Lynn Bryant. Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Architectural Photography Awards founder and part of the architectural scene and the architectural scene in general in London for many years. We're also joined today by a series of judges. We have Katie Harris, Head of Communications at Foster & Partners and a senior partner there. Architectural photographer Richard Bryant. Marco Giuliano, Reader of Architecture at the University of Liverpool School of Architecture. Lorian Ginitoyu, overall winner of these awards in 2019. And Hamish Crooks, Media Licensing and Archive Consultant at Magnum Photos. Now the format today is I'm going to ask Lynn to say a few words about the awards and how they came into being and what they're all about. And we're then going to look at the finalists for this year's awards in 4 sections: exterior, interior, sense of place and building in use. And we're going to see 4 finalists in each of those categories, and the judges are going to select 2 from each category that are going forward in their eyes for their own award. They won't judge it live today, but they're going to select their shortlist. And you viewers, whether you're watching this live or if you're watching it on catch-up, you'll be able to vote for awards as well. So there are double awards. There are awards from the judges, but you also have a chance to make, as it were, a People's Award. And you'll do that by going to the chat function on your screen. If you get into that, you will find a link to be able to register a vote, and the closing time and date for entries, it's midday, Thursday, the 2nd of December. Before we get on to looking at a wonderful selection of photographs, Lynn, tell us a bit about when did you come up with the idea of the awards, and remind me, how long have we been working together?
This is year 9. It would have been year 10. It's year 10 next year, so 2012. And the idea was for people to look a little bit deeper at images, because I think that we were already 10 years ago starting to scroll through them very quickly. And it's particularly important, I think, with architecture, whereas for many people it might be the only experience they have of a building or visiting a place. And architecture is so much more than a series of walls. It's very layered, and it has a purpose. And so it's to bring that through as much as we can and to try and educate people, architects as well as the general public, about looking at photography, but in our particular case, looking longer, looking at images for longer, and really trying to learn a lot by looking at them.
And I think the exhibitions you've held of shortlisted and winning designs over the years are proof positive of the enduring power of the single image, not merely to show what a building looks like, but to convey meaning, to provide some depth of understanding of what it is that the architect was trying to achieve with the design that they've delivered. And I'm sure you probably still get as excited as I do about the fascination of this medium.
Absolutely, and now it is so ubiquitous. I think it's even more important to have an award like this, because we're drowned out by quick fire images. We're living in an Instagram world. We're living in a world where we are not proactive anymore at looking in images. They flash before us. Whereas in the past, we've had time. We could decide if we wanted to turn a page, if we wanted to look for longer at an image. And I think we've got to start to get people to do that again, because so much of the subtlety in a good photograph is lost when it just flashes across the screen.
Indeed. Well, ironically, we're now going to show some images sort of flashing across the screen, but we've got about, I don't know, 12 minutes or so for each section. So if we can move to the first category for these awards, which is exteriors. That's a shot in brief of everything that we're going to see this afternoon, but let's move to the next slide, which is, I think, 4 images. There are the judges, and that first exteriors section will have 4 images, and we're going to invite the judges to say which 2 they would like to keep in. And I've got to start by inviting one of the judges to kick us off, so probably unfairly, but since he was the overall winner of this prize in 2019, Lorian Ginitoyu, would you like to tell us, and we can zoom into these images, if you just invite the controller to zoom in on one you'd like to look at. Perhaps you'd like to focus on the 2 that you think are the best of these 4.
Yes, that would be great. So I'm very glad that I'm here, part of this discussion, and I will be quite quick to pick few. I would definitely go with this photo by Kevin in the left, number 1, because I feel that it has well, a very strong graphic, a very strong moment. And I think there could be many references to this tower or towers. Maybe they are the 2 towers, or and also the unique moment of the people cleaning it and the balance of them and the overall composition. I would also maybe mention the one of Brad, the 4th image, that he was also talking in his text about the fact that it was a random evening, but if you see there in the right center, there are 2 deers or 2 or 3 deers appeared, and they created this dialogue between the photographer and the new viewers of the situation. And well, it's also and I would like to add something that although I know this photo from Instagram, we were mentioning about the amount of photos that we see every day. The second image, the one with around those facade, it's a very Instagrammable place, which is in Beirut. So I think it's hard to once you know photo or this place, it's hard to pick it as a selection.
Thank you very much. Let's see if your choices find favour with other judges. Richard Bryant, what do you think?
Well, I very much like the number 4, the Brad Feinkopf picture. I think, again, I mean, you probably can't appreciate it on the screen now, but the detail is astonishing, and it has a wonderful atmosphere to it, which is very intriguing. And I would say for my other image, the other image I find incredibly intriguing is number 3 by, what is that, Alex de Rijk, is it? I just find that this gives an illusion of space because you've got the layers. It's very difficult to see what's going on. It's quite abstract. And the composition is very nice, and the illusion of layers gives it this intrigue, which I find very attractive. So those would be my 2 choices.
Thank you very much. Katie Harris.
Yes, well, I think the first one I'd save actually is also the spring cleaning by Kevin, which I find also very graphic, and I love the little specks of red of the men cleaning it. It's just very unusual. I mean, my only problem with the Brad photograph is that it feels very much like a kind of hero shot of a building. It's not so much about, I guess it's the exterior, but I feel as I've seen a lot of photographs just like that. So my other choice would actually be the one by James Kerwin. What is that? Number 3, is it? I can't see. Yes, this one.
Number 2.
I was just fascinated by this one. I mean, it's about the architecture, which is a very unusual building. It's the way it's been treated by people who live there, I guess, with the funny square windows, and it's also a very graphic photograph. I maybe that was the one that Lauren was saying was very Instagrammable, but I just find a lot of interest in there, the way the building has been used by its occupants, and the juxtaposition of the square windows and the round windows. Those are the 2 I would save.
Well, that's excellent, and I think a tribute to the quality of the selection that all these images have got at least 1 vote so far. It's a strong shortlist. Can I invite you, Marco, you, Giuliani, to give us your choices?
Yes, thank you, Paul. Thank you to the festival and to Lynn for the invitation. Well, I think that here we have a very difficult job to do, as you were saying, Paul. Personally, I was very fond as well of Alex de Rijk image, because for similar reason to Richard's, I think also he's the architect of this building, so there is an interpretation, photographic interpretation, or that he wants to give of his own building that is an added value that we don't often have. I mean, many architects are also photographers, but few architects are photographers of their own building. I have, so this for sure, if you have to ask me for 2, for the second, I'm equally unsure between number 1 and number 2. Number 1, again, for the reason that who preceded me said, and also I think for me particularly it has an evocative relationship with the Twin Towers, unfortunately, in a different way. So it has an energy that in that case was negative, and in this case is let's say reinterpreted. Number 2, I agree with the problems that Kieran was suggesting, but at the same time, well, perhaps I would have placed this in the interior category if I was the author, because it's more about what's happening inside rather than what is happening outside, the appearance of what's happening outside, but actually is the use, the building in use that is giving that kind of feeling. So if I really have to choose, I would say 3 and 1, okay? So to make your lives easier.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. And Hamish.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thanks again. Thanks to Lynn and all the team for inviting me along. My choice, again, very, very difficult. All 4 of them are equally as good, I find. But if I was going to choose one, I'd like 2. I know the complaints against it. I know that the thought against it, but I like 2 just because it shows that it's one of the only ones that was really lived in. Like you really get the sense it's been there a long time. It's been lived in, and this is the how the architecture is. This is like the end product. Eventually, I don't know if this was in the plans for the original architect, but there's something about how that looks, and even the framing of it. I'm sure you could have done this in many different frames, and I have seen this building before as well, not on Instagram, but actually on other things. So I would go for number 2. Is definitely one. I like that enough to beat the others. And my other one was number 4, and it was like Richard said. There's a lot of detail in that picture. The deer, the right time of day, choosing that right moment to take the picture.
Can we zoom in on number 4, actually? Thank you.
It's like right at sunset, the light and the building. Just the way it's even framed, it's not close enough to really be very technical as such about the building, but it's just, I think it's a great exterior, and really for me, 2 and 4 were the two that say the most to me.
Well, that's very good. Thank you very much for that. You've been very concise in your comments about what you liked and why. And I suppose the advantage of choosing things on the basis of what you like, rather than elimination on the basis of what you didn't like so much, doesn't really apply in this case, because everything's got some support.
Yeah, everybody wants something, yeah.
Exactly, but on the basis of votes cast, and I think actually the judges, of course, will have to come to a final decision. So who knows? The conversation might restart off camera and before the final verdicts are announced. But for the purposes of this afternoon's exercise, it's numbers 1 and 4. Which have each got 3 votes, which constitutes a majority. So if we can just have a look at number 1 again, just as a reminder, really an intriguing image, and a very interesting group of architects, actually. And number 4, which is a kind of, there's a sort of Magritte quality about this, I suppose you might say. But it's not to gainsay the comments about numbers 3 and 2, both of which got support. So thank you for that, and I think let's, without further ado, and you've all been very polite and very complimentary, but you can have arguments if you'd like. Let's move on to interiors, and let's ask, I think we'll ask Richard Bryant to kick off on this one.
Well, this is a tricky one, isn't it? Because I can't be quite, the last group were such a strong, every image. I could have picked all of them, quite frankly. They were all so good. So it was very difficult to choose. This, I can't find anything I like quite so much. It's a little bit more difficult. I would say, at the end of the day, I've sort of ummed and ahed over these 4, but I would probably go for number 5, because it's just so theatrical and sort of perfectly composed. The others, to me, if you could zoom back to all 4 of them again, they sort of don't. They're a little bit. The other one I would probably be very positive about is number 8, the Zaha building, but there are a few little points about it that I can't quite get to grips with. And the photographer couldn't do anything about it at all, but it's actually about the positioning of the furniture on the lower level. What I do like about it is that it has a feeling of layers again. It's not just 2-dimensional, it has this feeling of space, because you've got the 3 or 4 or 3 layers of the building going down. But the way the furniture juts into the composition sort of spoils it for me. Sorry, photographer. If we can zoom back out again, I think the other 2
give us some
images,
comments on the other 2. Yeah, give us some comments on each of those.
I hate to be negative. I wanted to be positive about everything, but the other 2 are a little bit straightforward and a little bit obvious for me. They don't really capture my sort of imagination in the way that 5 and 8 do. So I think I'll leave it there. I won't go on about the negativity.
Yeah.
I think
No, that's very good.
I think that's what I'm good for anyway.
Yep. Katie Harris, what did you think?
Number 5, I think that's a very beautiful photograph. I think it's fascinating. I just keep looking at it. The way the curves of the costume and the straightness of the costume complements the curves of the building in very, very carefully composed image, and a little bit difficult to understand because of the verticals I think there's lots of interest. I look at it. I can look at that photograph for a long time. I think it's a very clever composition. That one. Is it? And then the Zaha one, the Me Hotel. I think that's number 8. That's the other one that I really like. I know what Richard means about the furniture down at the bottom, and yes, maybe somebody, a naughty photographer, might take out those bits of furniture down there. But again, I think it's very dynamic. I love the way the person is just moving at the corner of where the mezzanine is just sticking out there. I think it's just a really interesting composition. The way that again, as Richard said, the levels. And the colours are very nice together as well. The lighting is very good, and I find a lot of interest with that one. The rainbow apartment is again a little bit obvious. We've seen a lot of that before. It reminds me of I mean, it's a great photograph, but it does remind me of a lot of photographs we've seen in the past, and maybe a Gursky copy. And although I do like this, what looks like the station, is it the Art Deco by Helen Trust? I just, there's not quite enough in there. It's a little bit dull. It's not quite enough in there to keep my interest going. There's not enough dynamism. There's not enough story going on. There's not enough narration in that one. So those are my choices: the Me Hotel and the Times Pavilion.
Yep, Katie, thank you very much. Marco.
Okay.
Oh, thank you very much. This time, I mean, for me, it's quite easy, but it's almost the opposite of what they said before, because personally, I like very much the Berlin Station photograph. I like the symmetry, the perspective, the colors. Also, I think here there is a subtle hint by the photographer, because I think these stations were all made by the same Swedish architect, Grenander, and there are some Art Nouveau and some that are more towards modernism, and they were restored, I think, recently. So to me, this is a very interesting shot is my favorite of the group. I have great difficulties to identify a second one here, because the one of Zadid, I found it very mainstream. It's something that I have already seen, despite it's a very good shot, but it's not original enough to my eyes. I agree with all the comments on the other one that sits above Zadid, for similar reason that Katie was mentioning. The first that both Richard and Katie like very much, obviously, is very staged photograph. That is a thing that I am always a bit unhappy with it. So obviously, architecture and performance are very photogenic. So if you are smart enough to put the right people in the right position, in the right environment, everything will look beautiful. This said, I would say...
Can I interject there? Am I allowed?
Yeah, sure.
Am I allowed? Just to say that I understand that particular building is for performing arts, and that, I don't know whether that makes any difference to your opinion, but I believe it is a performing arts centre.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the point. But anyway, to close 7 and 5 are my two selections, even if there is a big distance for me between the two. Unpopular.
Thank you very much indeed. Hamish?
Sorry, it's on mute again. Yeah, this one, number 8 I really liked, because I had the feeling that if I was in that place and I looked over the balcony, that's what I was going to see. You know, it really, you know, yes, I understand the compositional thing, but maybe because of the background in photography that I have is like, you know, there are times where you're waiting for the donkey to walk into shot, the moon to hit, the car to pass, and everything to make it perfect, and it just doesn't happen. But I really like number 8 because I just got the feeling, yes, if I was in that hotel and looked over, it gives me a sense of being there, the layers, which is brought over very well in the design, that way that mezzanine sort of floor, if that's the right word for it, looks. And the one above it, number 6, I really like, but I had the feeling that I thought, okay, I would have liked some people in that. Like that's one, like the previous judging when they had the exterior, there was something about it being lived in, and this looks like it. Is it lived in, or is it a display? You know, I kept looking at it and thinking, God, it would have been great if people were coming out of those doors or waiting for those moments where there was human interaction with the building. So I really like that one, but I just thought, I don't know. And number 5 was quite similar to what Mark, I had a feeling that I'm never going to see that situation. I know it's a performing arts place, but it felt a bit like I'm not going to see that. If I went there, that's not going to happen. It's too, not too staged, because I understand why you would, and it's a building about that, but technically it's brilliant, I must say. And I'm going to leave it in my top because it is technically brilliant, I thought. But that's the only thing with me. I preferred my favorite would be number 8, just because there's just something about, you know, going to a building and looking over being in that same situation and seeing that, and the person walking through the set gives me that sense of scale and everything like that as well. So my 2 choices would be 5 and 8 for this one.
Thank you very much. And Lorien.
So it's I think this was one of the hardest one for me as well, because either they are I mean, I already know the 8 project because I've been there twice to the Me Hotel in Dubai and photographed it during the pandemic. So I mean I took many photos, so I'm not surprised by this one. So, but again, that's very personal. The 6, I will not pick it because I see it as a very, again, like Instagram place that everybody can go, and because it's on the map somewhere, and you know, and you go and take these photos. I like 7 because it's a very powerful atmosphere somehow, although it doesn't have people, and I think it's in contradiction what a station should be with many people, and at the same time, I don't know, there is something about these straight lines that somehow they are not following the rule. So somehow I like some of that. It's hard to and the dynamic of what that creates. It's hard to explain more than that. And 5, so I would go for 7, 1, and hardly picking 5 because it was, I mean, I think as Kate said, it's a very strong space with a lot of ambiguities. I was sure that it's a collage of 2 photos, so Lean contacted the photographer, so we got the file, and indeed it's just 1 photo, so it's not a collage. So I think that's somehow very powerful. But at the same time, I don't like the staging photo because again, it's not part of the way I work. So yeah, it's hard to pick the second one, being 5, but yeah, if I have to, I would pick that one.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I think that's going to be a very interesting final discussion amongst the judges, because on the face of it, nobody could deny that 5 had something going for it. Yeah. Some liked it more than others, but on the other hand, it's got 5 votes, if one wants to think of it in those terms. And then the other 2, well, 8 has got 3. It was one judge's favourite, and 7's got 2. And again, one of those, it was actually 2 judges made it their favourites. So it could be that there might be a further discussion to be had about 7 and 8. I will be intrigued to see what the outcome of this is. Thank you for your comments, and let's move on to our next section, which is always a good one, sense of place, or genius loci, I suppose. And let's see, who shall we ask to kick us off? Katie, can you kick us off with this one?
Yeah, sure. I actually like all of these quite a lot, and I found it quite difficult to single two out. But I think I can't see the numbers that well. But so top left, which I think is 9.
That's right.
Yes. So we saw a couple of these, and I think with the water and the setting of it, it's very ethereal, very weird. You take a while to work out what's going on there, but I don't think in the end that will be one of my choices. So the next one, if you could zoom out, I'll tell you which one it is. So bottom left. Looking at this one, what number is that? I can't see that. Okay, 11. Yes,
it's 11.
So yes, so 11. I really like this one a lot. I think there's so many things going on. You could almost sort of cut in half and get 2 photographs out of it. You've got the reflections, you've got the snow, you've got the bicycles, the cars. I think it's a great composition, and it makes me shiver. It makes me feel cool. There's lots going on. You can imagine that all the people coming to park their bikes and park their. So that's why I think it gives a sense of place to me. And with that rather extraordinary glass building, I think that would be my first choice. And then probably my second choice would be the holidays during COVID-19 in lockdown, which is probably number 13, is it? Bottom right.
Yeah, 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
12.
That one, which sorry, number 12. I beg your pardon. Yes, I think this is a real sense of place. Fascinating photograph, really weird, and all those people. I'm not quite sure whether they're all standing there and looking at the buildings, but yes, I think the whole atmosphere of that photograph, and a strange day of people all coming out together and sitting apart from each other, and the looking at these strange tall buildings which look quite incongruous next to the beach. So that's my second choice. I think the other
Thank you very much.
The other one was,
Sorry.
the other one was a little bit too much like Edward Hopper for me in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you, Paul. I mean, here I'm not going to repeat what Katie said because so to be quicker and to give more details on some that I like as well. I think number 9, I completely agree with their view on it, as well as number 10. I think it's an interesting photograph, but I mean, yes, there is a bit too much going on. And again, here, I don't know how much staged is. There is nothing wrong with being staged, as long as the viewer is not able to understand that it's staged, to my eyes. You know, that's the point. I'm not so fond of number 11, actually, because to me I feel very distant from this place, both in time and I mean the cold that is on the ground. I feel it inside. I feel very distant from it. Doesn't allow me to get a proper sense of place apart from displacement. While my favorite is by far number 12. I mean, here I think, to my eyes, there is another great photograph. I would say that are among one of my 3 favorites overall. The one that we saw previously of the station, and another that we will see further on. I think here we have something like a painting by Seurat. You know, you remember the people on the river. And then something so dystopian, like in different light, in daylight, like Blade Runner buildings on the back. And it encapsulates so well the period that we have and we are unfortunately still partially living. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Hamish.
Very difficult one, this one. I think it was probably the most difficult. But for me, number 13 is an exceptional photograph. Anything that, to manage to capture that scale, it can be very difficult, because you see a lot of times photographers, there's a sense. I remember working on a story on when they built the Airbus A380, and one of the hardest things was to try and get the scale of how big is this plane, because we all knew planes, and just like we all know buildings, we all know this obviously they're very tall tower blocks, but just the design and the architecture, but the way he's captured that scale of the people, and the term Blade Runner was said earlier, which it did remind me of a bit, but for me that really encapsulated that sense of place, the imposingness of that building, but the leisure that seems to be going on around. There's almost, to me, it's almost a contrast between the two. But I thought that struck me. I think it's hard not to strike you that picture, and it's just to bring that human element in with the scale. To me, that really works. The second one was really difficult. If you can we just go back? I think my second choice is the first one. Only because, like I think Katie said earlier, it offers so much intrigue. You really have to keep looking at everything, what is in the foreground, and it's not obvious things. The way that he's photographed it, those are not obvious things to photograph in that picture from that angle. I could think of probably other angles people would naturally shoot from, but the way that they've chosen the angle, and the way that there's a lot of ambiguity in what is going on in the picture, and I've chosen that just because of that clever composition. So my two choices were 9 and 13.
It's 12. 9 and 12.
12, sorry, 12.
Thank you very much for that. Lorien.
I will go with 12 and 9. I guess they are the same reasons that many of the previous judges mentioned, but most likely 12, because it has a strong sense of time and space, and I think that's very powerful. The fact that you can condense whatever happened in the world into these photos in the past 2 years. So I think that's very powerful, and 9 as well. I mean, from different reasons, of course, that the previous judges mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. It kind of looks like a mega version of Stonehenge if you squint your eyes. And finally, for this section, Richard.
Yes, well, Hopper and Seurat, how can we resist that? I just love these. I must admit, as soon as I saw them, I'm often influenced by painters in my work, and the first time I looked at number 12, it sort of is so intriguing, and it's on so many levels. It could be like a group of people watching the first Apollo space program takeoffs, in the 60s or something. Or it could be, so many things, and it sums up a wonderful context for those buildings in the distance. And the one above, which is number 10, is it? To me, this is so nostalgic. And as somebody mentioned, I think it might have been Katie, it is like a Hopper, but I like that. So I like Hopper and Seurat. And I find it a lovely composition in a slightly crazy way, and very intriguing and very warming. And you get a comfortable feel looking at this, which is in complete opposition to the feelings I get from 9 and 11, which leave me rather cool. And they're very good, but they just leave me a little bit cool. So I'm completely swayed by the atmosphere and warmth of the other two images.
Thank you very much. Well, it looks like number 12 looks like a bit of a shoo-in as far as the judges are concerned for that category.
And absolutely, and that is taken on film. It wasn't taken digitally. Okay, he had to change it into digital, but it was actually shot on film.
And that counts?
Just thought it's an interesting fact. And I think that's probably why it's got a very soft range of tone. and I wonder if that's because it was shot on film.
Yeah.
That might make it feel more like a painting, which we've all been comparing it with Seurat. Maybe that's part of it.
It's a very different image to the usual photographs of Moshi Safdie's Marina Bay Sands in Singapore. I mean, you know, an element of that is exactly the same. You do it in Singapore, and then you do a cut price version in China, and do a couple of extra towers because you
Throw
can.
them in, yeah.
It certainly made an extraordinary image. Well, we're moving on to our final sector now, another always intriguing one. This is building in use. And I wonder if we could ask you to kick us off, Marco.
Okay, thank you. I mean, here again, there is a set of interesting images, mostly technically very well executed. I will say that again. I was anticipating that there is here the third one that I like the most. That is number 16, actually. Again, also because it perfectly encapsulates the moment that we are living at the moment. So it's basically the absence of use rather than the building in use, and the contrast with the use of the other buildings that shows how this tower was vacated because of COVID cases inside it. I mean, it's also quite dramatic in terms of light, this kind of trees that are beneath forming the composition. I found it quite interesting. And again, the message is very strong to me. Can be, this is one of the points that I like the most, that, you know, can be only in this moment happening, this kind of photograph, because it's specific to what we are living now. The others, I have more difficulties. Compositionally, they are interesting. I know quite well the building by Muma Architects in Manchester, which is a beautiful building. I think this photograph is a nice one, but I don't think that it has strong connotations in terms of particular qualities. If I have to select also the other one, composition in number 14, I think this idea of the straight lines and the curve work very well. Here is what you leave outside of the frame of the glass that makes me a bit annoyed because it's not perfectly asymmetrical, I would say. But if I had to choose two, I would use the number 16 and then the school that is number 15, the one at the bottom. That is a bit a deja vu, I would say, but it gives a sense of these kids perhaps running home, and it has something in terms of related to the theme, building in use. So 15 and 16 for these reasons, or 16 and then a bit below.
And then 15, yeah. Thank you very much. Hamish.
Thank you.
Again, a very difficult one, and for different reasons. I really like 16 because of what it shows about this year. You know, as Marco said, not in use. It's a very interesting thing. That's really quite key for this year. I'm not 100% sure if that would be my final, because I like the two. I like 15 and 14 very much. I like 15 because it's quite simple. It shows it's in use. It's just a very well. It might sometimes people think these shots are quite easy to do, but they're not. They're really not, to wait for that right moment where you can get a sense of. You can still get a sense of the building, of its arrangements. But the fact that it's just like you could have just stumbled across this scene. It's somehow like it's living, which is also the same for 14 as well. Eventually, I'm going to go for 15 and 16 though. I think. I do like 14 just because it is that moment of, you know, you could have walked into that scene and the building is really shown, but there's something about 15, the simplicity of 15 and the way that 16 is a real product of our time. I think that's quite important to show, you know, we're not all immune to the outside influences. You know, a whole building shut down is very dramatic when you know. I mean, who knows, in a few years to come, people might just think it's a power cut. or something like that at the moment of a power cut. But the fact that it is COVID-19, I think, really puts its stamp, and I think that has to be acknowledged. That was a very well thought out photo, technically very well shot with the light on the trees and everything as well. But I would go 15 and 16.
Thank you very much. Lorian.
Well, definitely 16. But again, the reason it's quite clear, and it was mentioned already in this series and the previous one. Yeah, it's very powerful because it's such a unique moment, and the photographer was there, Chris was there to capture it. And the second one, well, that's far from the first one. I would go for the 14 because of the chromatics maybe, or the composition, and it's a nice photo.
Thank you very much. Richard.
Well, I'm out on a limb here. I like them all. They've all got something going for them. Everyone seems to love 16, and I find that satisfying only intellectually. Maybe that should be enough, but it's not for me. It photographically, in terms of sort of luscious photographic tones and color qualities or tonal qualities or composition qualities, it doesn't do it for me at all. But I agree, intellectually, it's a wonderful idea, executed quite well. On the other hand, 14 above, I found compositionally superb, but it's a sort of a bit of an obvious cliche shot to me. If we were all, I'm sure any of us, if we were in there photographing this room, we might do it in a similar way. So I don't find it very original. So I'm sort of drawn to number, 13, Muma, because initially this didn't appeal to me enormously, but then I started to look at it and look at what's going on. And you've got these layers. It's a little bit like that shot we had of the exterior right at the beginning of the shot taken by the architect of his own building. It's got all these layers going on, and the reflections forming abstract patterns, and the glimpse through to the little opening downstairs, and the ghost image of the people above. I feel there's a lot going on there. So that actually is my first choice. I don't think it's anyone else's, but that's my first choice. And below it, quite a long way below, I'm afraid, number 15, with the children blurring in the cloakroom. It's not a winner, but it's a lovely image. And as somebody pointed out, the blurring of the children is just perfect, and it's got a real appeal to it in that sense. It's not a pure intellectual photograph, but it is appealing. So that's my choice.
Thank you very much. And to round this sector off, Katie.
Okay, well, Richard, I totally agree with you. Number 13 for me is absolutely the first choice. I think it's fascinating. The more I look at it, I think it's very, very clever, very painterly. It reminds me of a painting, and the fact that you can see the people behind the glass, but is it a double layered glass? There's so much intrigue in there. I think it's just whoever's taken that has taken a lot of time to compose it and wait for the right reflections of the way the clouds are reflected and the different colors that you get. I could see that as a painting. I do like the Hong Kong lockdown one. I think it's a very arresting photograph, a very dramatic photograph, very dramatic. But actually, in the end, my second choice would be the dancers in the dance arch, which is that one. Yes. Again, yes, maybe it is a bit obvious, but it is just a very beautiful, calm photograph, nicely composed, and I like the reflection. I don't mind it not being symmetrical. I think it probably shouldn't have been symmetrical, but those are my two. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, quite a tussle going on there. 3 votes for 16, 3 votes for, and a couple of those were first votes, I think, and 3 votes for 15, 2 first votes for 13, couple of votes for 14. Another interesting one for the judges. Looks like 16's probably going to get there, but what a wonderful contrast between 13 and 16.
In so many ways. I mean, whether you're talking about time of day, whether you're talking about scale, you know, they're so very different. Yeah.
What do you think of the comments you've heard overall, Lynn? Pretty much expected? Any shocks?
Oh, a couple of them were, I'm not going to say who said what, but a couple of them were surprises, I have to say. Bringing in what is a building in use, I think or if you looked at all of the category, you know, what you're supposed to look for in a category, I think sometimes that has been overlooked. It's very interesting, the idea that number 16 is very much a sort of an intellectual choice. I think that I hadn't thought of that, yeah, and I can see that. If you're looking for an image to stand the test of time, architecturally, that's something I think people should think of. Has it shown you something different? Has it, have any of the images here made you want to look for longer? Because that's one of the important things, I think. And I think that, yes, I think number 16 does make you want to look for longer, as does number 13. And they are totally different.
Yes, it's quite interesting to make a comparison with the drawing prize that we also run as part of World Architecture Festival, where it's not enough for a drawing simply to convey this is what something's like. It has to do much more than that to really become valuable. And I think I've really enjoyed looking. I hadn't seen any of these images before, and it's been a pleasure looking at them. And you know, I applaud the judges for actually quite a broad choice. It's not obvious which ones would immediately win their category, and I don't suppose it's very obvious which one is going to be decided as the overall winner. It's a sort of rich mix. Yeah. I mean, when I was editing and sort of making fairly rapid choices, I would have to say, about which images to use, I was always intrigued by the whole building in use thing. We ran a series in the Architect's Journal which looked at the life of an opera house over 24 hours, and the photographer would have to be there night and day really to get a flavour of what was really happening. And I've always been intrigued by the difference between the permanence of the building, even interior, which might change every so often, but you know, the solid structure, and then the very temporary occupation by whether it's, you know, opera goers or whether it's patients in a hospital. But then there are the medical staff for whom the building is just as much like home as it is a place of transience. So, you know, those thoughts triggered off by these wonderful images. I wondered, just before we close, whether I could ask each of the judges to say how optimistic they feel about the future of still photography, even if it is occasionally an adapted piece of film, in the face of the competition from the instant imagery that we find, and animations, and everyone now in the world thinks they're a photographer because they've got a mobile phone. Any thoughts of that? Let's run down the line. Lorian, optimistic?
Yes, I think so. I think it's as it's harder to be out there nowadays and look for things. And although there are many photos every single second that they are scrolling to our eyes, I believe that there is a. I'm very optimistic about. Let's put it this way, and I'm waiting forward to kind of be out there again and do my work.
Great, thank you very much. Richard?
Well, I'm always optimistic, but I have to say it's sort of partial in this case. But what I'd like to go back to is the judging of the images. I just found that absolutely fascinating because here we are, we're all sort of looking at these photographs in a fairly isolated situation, thinking, well, this is what I like and this is what I don't like about particular images. And you justify everything and in your own mind, and then to hear the comments from other people who like completely different images, and you suddenly start thinking, this is just fascinating to get the input of all sorts of different people. So I've really enjoyed that. It's really been enjoyable hearing other people's the reasons why people like photographs, even though you've justified something in your own.
Very good. Katie?
Yes, I'm definitely optimistic. I'm always fascinated by how our photographers go out and capture a building or a view or a scene compared to if I went and took that same photograph. It constantly amazes me that photographers can get that extra thing out of photographs. Whether it's the light, the composition. I mean, using the different lenses and so on. I think, and we often get different photographers taking shots of the same buildings, and we get this wonderful array of different views of the building. And that's always an enjoyable thing. I think I'm very optimistic about a good photographic future for photographers.
Thank you very much. Marco?
Thank you. Well, absolutely optimistic. I have to say that for me, the Instagram world or the web world obviously has accelerated and multiplicated the number of images. But what stand on the retina more and then is transferred to our inner eye in the mind will always stand the test of time. And the discussion that we just had clearly explains what are the reasons why an image can stay more on the retina, because there is thinking, there is a compositional, thoughtful compositional approach. So a lot of things that, references to paintings and to something that was already done in the past. So it will always stand the test of time, photography. It's might be that we will have a new media, but this new media will continue to compete with photography.
Thank you. And Hamish?
I'm very optimistic. I mean, I'm actually of the mind that I like all this Instagram, millions of pictures, only because I think it raises the standard overall. I mean, yes, you get inundated with lots of mediocre pictures, but I quite like it's a bit like if everyone played football at the weekend and run around, not everyone's going to play in the Premier League, and so the distance between the two is more marked, but there's more people doing it, and I'd rather that than less. At the end of the day, people are more interested in photography, and I think you're seeing, as time goes by, I think the quality has slowly increased. If you look back on camera phone pictures even from 15 years ago, they were nowhere as good as now. People have improved, and I think there's still that bit at the top that will always be there. I mean, it's much easier to become a competent photographer. It takes you 2 or 3 weeks probably to use the camera, the lenses, things like that. But to be a good photographer is still the same process. It still takes a huge amount of time, a huge amount of effort. And I just find the more people interested, I mean, I'm hoping that through this mass use of photography, we see newer forms of photography coming from places that maybe we didn't see it before, rather than coming through those same funnels of how they get to the top. But yeah, very optimistic, and the judging was great because, yeah, again, just like the other said, I look at something and you want your reassurance. It's a value judgment, and hearing people coming from their own sides was really fascinating for me, especially as I'm not really from an architectural photography background, but to understand what you were looking at and what I was looking at, and what we like and what we don't like. You know, it's all great. So overall, for me, it's all just great for photography as a whole. And I'll end it there.
Thank you very much. That's a very nice note to end on. So thank you, judges. Thank you for those who've been viewing. And if you're watching this on catch up, let me remind you about how you can make your vote and actually be responsible for, as it were, people's prizes, along with the prizes awarded by the judges for this year's Architectural Photography Awards. You go to the chat function, and on there you will find a method of registering your vote for your favourite image in each of the 4 categories. And you need to make your vote by midday, Thursday, December the 2nd. Meanwhile, from Lynn Bryant and myself, from our studio here in Shoreditch, thank you very much, and see you soon. Thank you, judges.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.